Hello, I'm Kevin Hong. I'm a partner at LYC Partners, an executive search and leadership advisory firm. I'm also the co-founder of The Council, a private network for senior executives. And this is Leaders in Motion.
Today we welcome Sega Cheng, CEO at iKala. Sega started as an engineer at Google Taiwan and worked on Android. Then in 2012, Sega walked away and co-founded iKala. 14 years later, Sega serves over 1,000 enterprises across Asia with AI adoption platforms. Most technical founders struggle to make the shift from builder to CEO. Sega made it work. Today we're talking about the transition from Google engineer to scaling an AI startup, building one of the world's largest influencer data platform, and bridging Silicon Valley engineering culture with Asia-Pacific market realities. Sega, welcome to Leaders in Motion.
Hi, Kevin. It's so nice to be here.
Many people might not be very familiar with iKala and also your journey. So to begin with, maybe we can start with a short presentation, introduction of your career, your background, and your company.
Sure. Thank you. So I started my career in AI actually at Stanford, where I got my master's degree in computer science, specializing in AI. But that was 20 years ago. And so after Stanford, I went to Google as a software engineer, working there for almost 6 years before coming back to Taiwan to build up the startup iKala until now. We started iKala 14 years ago, and it has been a very long journey. Along the way, we started iKala, providing cloud solutions to enterprises customers. So we have been a B2B company until now, and we started with a cloud solution. But along the way, we have seen a paradigm shift in AI marketing, and so we kicked off our second growth engine back in 2018, stepping into the field of AI for marketing. And that's when we started building now the largest one of the influencer marketing platform in the world, which we call it Kolr, collecting more than 300 million influencers, creators data around the world. So that's pretty much the short background of me. So, in a word, iKala provide, the total AI solution, for our enterprise or B2B customers by helping them adopt AI and use AI for marketing. So that's what we do.
Interesting. Maybe allow me to rewind back. So you're originally from Taiwan, and at some point you decided to go and study in the US. How did that happen? What was the shift that you had an opportunity? You always planned to move to the US. What was the plan?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Taiwan, but during my college here, I decided to study abroad, and I started, preparing for that. That was almost 25 years ago, around 2000. But I got a mandatory military service, 2 years of it, to serve in the army here in Taiwan. And so, but after college, I enlisted in the army and serving there for 2 years, also doing some IT stuff, for the army before I went to Stanford for graduate study in computer science and AI. So that was my journey. So yeah, back in college, I decided to go abroad and got a degree there. And later, after getting a degree, I stayed there working for Google for a couple of years before coming back to Taiwan to start my own company.
Interesting. And maybe something that is quite shocking to me is that you're talking about moving to the US to learn about artificial intelligence, but it was back in 2005.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did that happen? Because we just learned about AI, most people just 4 years ago.
Yeah, in fact, AI has been there, for almost 70 years. So it's nothing new. In fact, especially in terms of academics or researchers, they have been doing a lot of stuff, in AI for the past century. But back in 2000 or even 2005, so few people really know what AI is about, even the Silicon Valley stuff. And so, that was when I went to Stanford. But I already felt the pulse, of, bringing AI, into real applications over there. 2005 was also the year of, when YouTube was founded and when Facebook, just launched, last in the year. And so, well, I mean, the startup ecosystem there is amazing. It has always been. While Stanford are definitely, one of the pioneers, in AI research. So back in Stanford, one of the projects we have been working on is autonomous cars, driverless cars. And so, well, even in 2004, it seems that AI was still really unrealistic for, something human, for tasks that only humans can solve, like driving cars. 2005, lab at Stanford, we won the champion, of a DARPA challenge, of making driverless cars to drive across the desert, out, near the Arizona. So that was when everyone realized that, okay, AI, maybe we could really bring AI into reality. So, well, that was 20 years ago. We don't have deep learning. We didn't have big data. We didn't even have mobile phones, right? Smartphones. So, well, the research was really naive back then, and we collect all the data. We use naive algorithms to tune the AI. There was just nothing like GPU, big data, cloud, or deep learning. So we were doing some, pioneering research, but the performance was really bad, really, really bad. And so it took another 2 decades until now, to make AI a reality. But we had seen the spark, at Stanford, 20 years ago. So that was
quite curious to understand what was bad at that time, and also what was the spark that you started to see. What was the potential that you guys saw back then?
Yeah. So at Stanford, we tried to use AI, in the physical scenarios, right? Like driverless cars. So as you can see, well, we do have some, we are having some driverless cars right now, on the road. And like in San Francisco or Texas, or in some Asian cities right now. But 20 years ago, it's just an experiment. And the way we won the championship of DARPA Challenge was to make the car, driving itself so slowly that it took like 3 to 4 hours to finish, like 70 miles. So it was so slow that it was almost impossible to put into practice. So physical AI, that was a failure. And then we moved back to software AI for the next 2 years, like adopting it in machine learning for Google search or machine learning for Google Maps. And so there had actually been a lot of pivots, along the way. So we started with physical AI, and it turns out that it didn't work out. But the experiment was great. But in reality, application or infrastructure, they were just not there yet. So yeah, that's why.
That's really cool. I mean, it feels like moving into a time capsule. It's very interesting. And then you moved to, you stayed for a few years in the US. You worked, actually, you moved back to Taiwan, and you started to work at Google. Am I right?
Yeah, so I spent half of time, my tenure at Google in the headquarters Mountain View, and then moved back to Taiwan for another 3 years to help prep the office here. And so yeah, that was my journey at Google.
Okay, and then what led you to leave Google? I mean, you might have seen a lot of potential as well, but
Yeah.
potentially, well, you decided otherwise. So what made you leave?
Okay, that almost became the FAQ. I should put it online. Everyone was asking about, okay, why I left Google. So I was at Google during the golden era, of Android's ascent. Google Taiwan back then, before I left, it was definitely a powerhouse of engineering excellence. But there's this kind of, disconnect from this Valley model of software, which was built, for the whole world, and the specific digital transformation needs of the Asia Pacific APAC enterprise customers here. I mean, there's a huge gap. There was a huge gap between the Valley and Asia. So that was why I want to have my own startup, because I saw the opportunities here to bring the most cutting edge technology software Asia's market. Well, as an engineer and as an early engineer of Google, I also wanted to build a company, like Google, even though, that was, I know that was almost mission impossible right now, but I still have that passion, to build a company of my own and, doing something great, like Google was doing. Well, leaving, it was not a rejection of Google. I just want to embrace the blue ocean opportunity I'm seeing here in Asia, when there was a huge gap between what was happening in the valley and the customers' needs I saw, back then here in Taiwan. So, well, that's when, everything just came together.
And you mentioned that you saw a gap between what was done in the Valley and in Asia enterprise needed. So can you be specific? So anything in particular, any examples that you had in mind that you say, listen, this is not serving the local customers here?
Okay. I think until now, every company or every customers we met, they have been always talking about digital transformation. And I came to realize that it's a very strong need, for a company to sustain itself, especially in this turbulent time, right? And so, well, before leaving Google, I saw the opportunity that, okay, so, well, every company or every industry here in Asia, they're doing everything in the old ways. I mean, they don't even know how to use Gmail. They don't even know how to use, Maps or some, online collaborative software. So let alone cloud. When, cloud was very new to most customers here in Asia, like 15 years ago. So that's when I saw the opportunity because Google was an internet native company. We had been using cloud all along, but somehow I'm seeing that cloud is taking off, like crazy, 15 years ago. And so I saw the opportunity of a cloud adoption and, to transform how businesses are running and to transform, to change their CAPEX, into OPEX so that they have the flexibility to deploy their system and their operation. That was the opportunity I saw back then and the gap, between the Valley and between Asia.
And then, well, as an engineer and you start to build your own company and potentially, a startup and a business is definitely different as being an engineer, right? You need to focus on customers, you need to focus on the business, you need to focusing on revenue generation, etc., and origination of business. So how was that transition?
That was a hell to me. I can tell you for sure because I was a builder, right? And I'm still a builder right now. So I'm kind of, managing the transition from deterministic coder to probabilistic leadership, where uncertainty is the norm. So the hardest thing for me is not to learn, new stuff, but to unlearn, a lot of, or, even, remove my DNA, some of my DNAs that I got from Google. The Valley culture, as everyone knows it, is flexible. It's about moving fast and break things. And it's about iterations. It's about release often, release fast, release early. But, as a company, owner, that would be something you should really be careful about because you have that limited resources in your hands. You have to make sure that you allocate the resource right. And rather than solving engineering bottlenecks now, I'm actually solving strategic, bottlenecks now. And so I should be, I'm always worried about, the talent density. Is that high enough for the next 30 to 36 months? And basically I moved from being the person who writes the script, to the person who ensures the stage is set for the actor to succeed. So along the journey, I've been struggling about whether I should, I should be getting back to writing code myself or developing all the stuff, developing all the products myself. But I have been very cautious about this because once you have get on that way, it's really hard to go back. As a company leader, you have to really take care a person first and things second. So that's the hard lessons I learned along the way. It's not just about you solving an engineering problem on your own, with your own talents. It's about empowering an entire team, especially when we have, more than almost 150 people now. It's about encouraging people, empowering people to solve the problems themselves. And so that's the hard transition, I had never expected, before I started this company. That's the biggest hard lessons I've learned along the way.
And when you started the company, did you went fundraising, went to VC? How was the journey? Because it's also a different hat to wear to go fundraising, right?
Yeah, just like everyone else, I first went to family, friends, and fools. So that's the three apps I went to. Well, because they were the only ones who would trust me, I would be successful. So yeah, friend, family, and fools. I went to them for funding. Of course, I sold some of my Google stocks, but I was really regretful of doing that because as you can see, the stock price was going up like crazy. So, but anyway, that's how I got the funding. Yeah. So we had gone through several rounds of funding. So we are now in our pre-IPO stage. So yeah, we are preparing for IPO, and along the journey we had raised several rounds. So like pre Series A, from C funding to Series A to A and to post B and B plus. So, we raised a total about $50 million US, and before we started preparing for IPO right now. So yeah, but we are self-sustainable right now. Yeah, that's definitely a very big trap for any builders or founders. Be really careful about diluting your own your own equity of the company along the way. So be sure you are the major owner. You stay the major owner of the company. Otherwise, your decisions were going to be affected by the board or by investors a lot. And so, that's a very common pitfall, for builders and founders. So I think the best practice here is to really be really careful about spending your money from day one. Well, unless you're OpenAI or Anthropic, right? But most of the builders or founders, they just have they just have so much cash in their hands. And so be really careful about hiring new people and spending money like crazy. That's not the way to do a startup, even though the media or the VCs, they are encouraging you to do that. But that's not the best way for founders.
Started iKala. And then what was the first idea? What was the first revenue maker of iKala?
Yeah.
Because I know you, and you will talk a little bit about Kolr, I assume. And so what was the first product that generated revenue and the business model of iKala in the beginning?
Okay, so it was a really interesting story. The company was called iKala because we want to do online karaoke. That was the first revenue generator, but that was also a very costly business to do because of the royalty fee we have to pay to the recording companies. And so, even though it was a revenue generator from the beginning, but it is still very cash burning. So we started to stop the project 2.5 years later, after I started this company. And then we pivot to cloud. And the cloud would be the next, real deal, revenue generator for us. It has a really healthy traction of generating revenue. At the same time, the cost is controllable. So initially we had online karaoke, a short video platform, as a cash generator, but later we pivot to B2B, from B2C to B2B. And then we started the cloud and then the AI business over there.
And when you mention cloud, can you enter a little bit more detail into what's the business model of your cloud business in the beginning? I'm not sure whether you still have that business today, but how was it? You say it was profitable, but how was the business model at that time?
Yeah, we still have that business today. So initially we provided some off-the-shelf, cloud software like streaming software, which people can use to set up their own website for streaming videos. So this also we also borrow the experience we tried to do, online karaoke years before, and then transform the software into a B2B one. And so the business model is a subscribe business model, or much like you are subscribing to any software, and we charge customers by their usage on a monthly basis. So that's basically the business model we do. It's a software licensing, it's a software leasing, much like, everyone is doing, renting cloud business right now. And later we became one of the largest partner with Google Cloud because our software as a service business is doing really well, and we had a large consumption, on Google Cloud. And then so Google came to us and saying that, okay, why don't we just do vertical integration? That, okay, you are on the software application level, but Google is on the infrastructure level. I think that they think that we made a perfect match. Well, that's when we became a global partner with Google, and then we still have the business until today. So we have been doing cloud business for more than 10 years too. Before and later, the real second growth engine is the Kolr platform. When we stepped into AI for marketing back in 2018. That was 3 years after we started the cloud business.
Interesting. And then did you add any other businesses on top of cloud?
Yeah, we actually provided a lot of add-on value add services to the cloud. So well, for the past 2 years, we have been working on our own on-premises agentic platform to help enterprises adopt their own on-premises AI inside their organizations without connecting to the cloud. So it's kind of complement, to the existing cloud offerings we are having with Google. And we are seeing that the demand is taking off as well. And so, yeah, again, it's a vertical and a complementary offering with our existing cloud offerings. So, well, in addition to the platform itself, we have been, doing a lot of AI stuff like LLMs like 5 years ago. And so, well, we do have some offerings that's kind of more detailed, like LLM governance, security, or evaluation. We have a whole set of methodology and practices that we package as a add-on solution on top of the cloud to our enterprise or business customers.
Interesting. And what type of who are your clients? You're talking B2B, but who are typically your type of clients?
Yeah. So our customers span across almost 12 different industries. Well, most of the big customers come from gaming, financial, manufacturing in Taiwan, and also some ad agencies. So these together form the largest customer base of our existing customers.
Interesting. And want to move to the you mentioned in the beginning the largest influencer data platform.
Yeah.
And can you tell me more about that and how does it lead to this product? I think this is your star product, right?
Yeah. This is the star product, and it's still the flagship product we are having in our hands. So, well, again, it was a really interesting story on how we got started, with this product. So, well, back in 2018, again, Google, we just chit-chat with Google, and they said, okay, so, well, Sega, since you are really good at AI, do you have any idea that how we can help advertisers find the right influencers or creators around the world for advertisers or marketers to partner with? So, well, that's when we came up with the idea. Okay, so this kind of, a big challenge that nobody, has solved really well. So I kind of, saw it as a engineering problem. So, well, the reason we did Kolr is that we want to turn, influencer marketing into a data science, right? Because it's really hard to measure the performance of influencers or creators on their platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube X, whatever social network they are on. it's really hard to measure. Who should we go to when I want to sell like this smartphone, want to sell this pair of shoes? What kind of sponsored content shall I do with this or that influencer? So that's the very common question that advertisers or brand marketers, they were all asking about, but they didn't have a really good solutions to. So that's when we started doing that. So my idea was really simple. So, well, as an engineer and as the one who had done a lot of stuff, Google search. So I was thinking, why don't we just, organize the world's influencer information and make them accessible to advertisers or brand marketers? So that's how we got started, with Kolr. We started to collect, all the influencers, from every social network in the world. Until today, we have accumulated, more than 300 millions of influencers worldwide. That's around, 45% of the world's total population. So so that was also a surprise, a pain point, from an unexpected pain point from advertisers or marketers, back in 2018. And so we leveraged this opportunity and started our second growth engine, for iKala. Well, until today, so Kolr, the platform itself, have evolved into not just a big data platform, but to a platform that our customers, especially those from advertisers and marketers, that they can, partner with influencers, they can do their campaign management, and they can, get an idea of the competitive landscape, in their own industry. So yeah, that's how we started Kolr, our second, growth engine for this company.
That's interesting that you start in cloud and then now you're working with influencers and marketing and advertising. And when it comes to building a team, must have been also a challenge because they also need to adapt to your vision and to the changes of the business. So how do you deal with having to build, maybe you're building not fast enough, maybe you're building too fast and you're building from the right, you have the certain skill sets at a given point, but maybe they are not the one that you need for a certain shift or pivot. Like you mentioned Kolr, maybe at the time you don't have the right capability in-house. So how do you manage building your team along this journey?
Okay. So, well, I think that the hardest part, of starting this company in its early days was to find the right people with similar mindsets, as me. And well, because I came from the valley with their DNA, so I know what what it looked like to move fast and build and break things. But that was not something, traditional, in Asia, especially in terms of building a local team here, not just in Taiwan, but in Asia in general. And so, well, I think the first challenge was to find the right people with the right mindset, people who are really to iterate really fast and to ship the product that was not perfect. So, and they have to tolerate a lot of uncertainty along the way and really be customer driven. So that's some of the DNAs I've been looking for, even until now. And so, well, the kind of traits we are looking from people are ambition, of course, and their adaptability. Well, especially, in the AI age right now. So, yeah. So, of course, initially you would want to find people who were really good at coding or really good at sales, really good at marketing. Yeah, that of course, that's that's a must have, for everyone. But right now, I'm actually more focused on their traits right now, their characteristics. Are they ambitious enough to adopt AI? Are they facing uncertainty, with positive attitude? But that's some of the traits I've been looking for here in Asia. But well, it turns out that these traits are very rare here in Asia, especially, this is a place, where most people are followers and they're so used to top-down, management. They need some people to tell them, okay, what's your objective right now? They are not really accustomed, to bottom up objective management or even, came up with their own ideas or even speaking during the meetings. So these are the culture here. Well, I think that's I especially emphasize on adaptability, find adaptability, from our candidates. So yeah, and the rest is history.
What is your recipe? Do you have a formula that helps you to identify this type of characteristic in people, especially in a market where, as you mentioned, this is not a very common trait. People are more used to top down. So how do you do that? Are you looking at something specific on a CV?
Okay, I think you can tell nothing from CV nowadays, right? Especially when every CV is written by AIs. I think that's CV is just for reference right now. Even so, right now, and so during the interviews, most of the time I would ask some questions like, okay, what's special about you? Well, that's typically the first question I would throw to the candidates. Him or her elaborate as much as possible. And so, in addition to some standard, or traditional interview questions, I would throw, open questions like this, to the candidates. And so I try to remove, those boilerplate, questions, interview questions right now. And I kind of, inclined to throw this open question like, so what kind of project, what's the most impressive project you have been working on? Can you elaborate on the details about that? So, that's the trick I have been using until now. And during and most of the time I would stay quiet. I just listen to what candidates are talking about. Well, the more they talk, the more they will disclose about their true selves. And so I think this is even more important given that they can prepare their interviews really well, with AI, especially in terms of paperwork or in terms of standard answers to standard questions. So don't do that anymore. Just give the candidates the open questions. The more the better. And see how they elaborate and what's behind their stories. And you can tell a lot of different stuff, like their traits or their specialty or their attitude or anything about them that are hidden, behind their elaborations. So that's the trick I'm having.
It feels, and necessarily so, I would say, quite time consuming, especially when it's harder to see who are the good candidates from a CV anymore. But do you have any trick from a career pattern? Like, let's say you're looking for certain specific traits in an engineer, and you know that a good engineer that has these traits, potentially have followed this path. I mean, it could be as simple as they lived abroad, or they had internship in XYZ, or they worked in the US or in the UK. Do you have any trick that you use so that you can filter down the CV?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are still some, traditional filters you can use to really narrow the candidate funnel. So, of course, like you said, so for example, given a CV, if we find that, okay, the candidate is a grasshopper, he or she changed, jobs so frequently, then that would definitely raise an alert, in the team. Be really careful about hiring this person because he or she may not be stable enough to stay at this company for over a year, which could be which could cause damage, given the hiring cost is really high. And of course, I think there are some traditional ways you can still tell if a candidate is really good or not. Of course, based on their schools, based on where they got their degree, that's still I think that's still an effective filter you can use. So, of course, given given the turbulence we have, from AI right now, the most important thing is that I would especially take a look at, whether this candidate have a real working experience, whether it's internship, during their study, whether it's a full-time or part-time job they have, they have I'm really focused on hands-on experience right now. So rather than, someone with a really good academic backgrounds, I would prefer, somebody who has a really, real deal, working experience. But again, it's very important to learn new things and unlearn your existing, expertise, nowadays. So I will also, at the same time, try to filter, people who were really not adaptive, even though they have a really good track record, before. So yeah, combining them together, that's how I filter, really great candidates.
And when it comes to the current the newer generation? As do you feel? And you mentioned like a lot of candidates, they get ready and they're prepared with AI nowadays. Is so much easier. Do you see difference when it comes to leadership or soft skills today in the new candidates that you meet compared to maybe when you started?
Yeah. Well, there's a huge difference and gap between generations. And when we talk about generation, it was like, well, each generation is just, well, it's just, like 12 years, between. I mean, the gap is only like 12 years, in our age. And so 12 years, another generation, another 12 years, a new generation. I'm Gen Y, XYZ. Yeah, I'm Gen Y. But there's a lot of Gen Z and also Alpha or Beta, workforce that they're just getting their first job right now, and the way they are working are so different, from me. They are not really patient. Like for Gen Z, take Z or Gen Alpha, for example, they are not really patient. They want to see the result really fast, and they want a quick feedback. So if we are telling them to be patient and stay there doing the same job for another year before promotion, they're gonna leave. That's the huge difference, and that's a huge gap I'm seeing now. So managing a company nowadays is much like managing three to four different generations at a time, and that's the challenge of leaders nowadays. So, well, for me or for more senior people than me, they are more patient, they are more stable. They stay at a job like for more than 3 to 5 years, but they are not a quick learner in terms of using new tools. So there are pros and cons. There's no definitive answers about, which generation is the best or which one's the worst. No, you just have to leverage their pros and cons and remove their pros, use their pros and remove their cons. So that's how I'm seeing organizations right now, how I see leaderships right now.
Talking about leadership, and do you have any definition of what a good leadership for your company is, and especially when it comes to leading across a generation in a more fast-growing company and also across borders as well? Do you have any sort of definition for that leadership?
Okay. I think there's people talk about leadership, in a more abstract way, but I think the most important traits of a good leader or a good leadership is about curiosity. I know that sounds like cliche, but that was that's the conclusion, of my 15 years, in this job as a CEO, as a chairman, leading this company. And so I think curiosity can, if you're a leader, you have a curiosity, you can really use that to solve, countless challenges ahead. Whether it's cross-cultural management, as long as you have the curiosity to know, different culture, to know how different people work, you're going to come up with a solution to yourself. And as long as you have a curiosity about, what's coming for the new technology, what's coming with AI, how is AI going to disrupt, our business, then you know pretty well what's your next action could be. And so I think a good leadership really starts with curiosity. And of course, there are other traits that defines a good leadership, like everyone will talk about, like empathy, proactivity, ambition, something like this. But I think they all stem from curiosity. As long as you want this company to succeed and you have that curiosity and passion to do that, and that will make you a really good leader. And along the way, you're going to have your own way of defining, what a good management is, especially given your context, your unique context of leading the company. So talking about leadership, I would say, curiosity. If there's only one thing I can keep with myself, that is definitely curiosity.
Which team members are more coachable or has the highest potential to develop into leadership position within your company? Do you think that sales, usually typically people think of salespeople being more proactive and also outspoken compared to engineers that are maybe a little bit less visible or inclined to lead people? Where do you see which departments, which team members you think has the best potential to become leaders, and which ones are a little bit more difficult or struggle a bit more?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So to begin with, this is almost random. I mean, good leaders could come from sales, marketing, or engineering. It's totally random. So it's really hard to define a leader by her role or her position in the company. That's something I want to begin with because, as you said, leadership or a good leader, it's really about their personality, their traits, their characteristics, and much less about, their specialty or their trained expertise. So, good leaders, they all have some common traits, like they know how to do a good communication with other people, and they don't get emotional easily, and they have the ambition, they have the empathy to take care of their team members, and they know how to encourage others and how to collaborate with others, not just do everything solo. So that's the most common traits I'm seeing from good leaders. They are all soft skills, nothing about hard skills. So that's why I'm saying that leaders come up randomly in every organization. So I think it's the top leaders' responsibility, in any company or any organization to identify this kind of traits, not just from a certain, department like the sales department you just mentioned. Salespeople are really good at talking, right? They are really good at selling stuff, but they are not really good at, taking care of people, or managing, regular tasks or mundane tasks that companies need. Don't limit yourself to finding good people from a certain department. They could be everywhere in your organization, the company. Don't just try to identify the blind spot of a company. You have to identify the bright spots of the companies as well. And that's when you have to identify good traits, from people across your entire organization.
Is a leader made or born?
70% born, I would say. The rest, 30, they're trained.
And would you say that the newer generation, sometimes we may have misconception or truth, I don't know, that the newer generation, Gen Z and beyond, struggle a little bit more than the previous generation when it comes to soft skills? And do you think that that might be a little bit more of a struggle to find future leaders among this generation, or maybe it's a misconception completely? What do you think?
Well, I think definitely in terms of the communication, I think Gen Z, they really have a hard time, adapting to how people, to previous, how people communicate, among previous generation. That's definitely a challenge they're facing now. And I'm also seeing that, in my company as well. Well, they're just so different. They are completely, a different generation. They were born and raised surrounded, by social network. So the way they communicate is very social network-ish. And so that's how previous generations are not, so accustomed, to the style, they communicate. So that would definitely limit their career path, going forward if they don't spend, additional time, polishing their communication skills or styles. So I think that's something they should really be watching out for. And, well, at the same time, again, identify the bright spot, of Gen Z. They are quick responder. They are quick receivers. And so use that advantage, to do quick iterations in your organization. Well, of course, at the end of the day, not so many, Gen Zs want to be leaders today. Well, that's also a norm, in the workspace. Somehow they need some work-life balance, work so hard, work their ass off, like their previous generations do. But they're more focused on work-life balance. They want to finish up their work for today and then have a clear, cutoff, from the company, from the work. And so I think that's something. So that's why they are a quick mover, right? They want to solve everything right now at this very moment. And so that's something we can learn from them. And they adapt really quickly how they communicate. But of course, for Gen Z themselves, they want to move up, in their career ladder, communication styles. And that's definitely something they should polish and they should focus more on.
And do you have any advice for any future leaders still in the beginning of their career, but even the ones in mid-level managers when it comes to either moving up the ladder or building their own company? Any advice when it comes to the future ahead?
Okay. So I think for future leader or even IC, individual contributors, I have the same advice for them. So, well, rather than encouraging them to pursue their passion, I will encourage them to pursue their expertise first. So that's a quite different advice, to some other people would give you, because passion would diminish along with time. You can be you can be very passionate at the very beginning, but after 5 or 10 years, is your passion still there? That's a good question, for everyone to think about. So instead of encouraging everyone to stay so passionate and about talking loud, every day, but I would really encourage you to pursue your expertise, to go deep as much as possible. And from there, you will get your achievement, you will move out your career ladder, and you will naturally become a leader if you have the traits that were born with you. So pursuing your expertise first. Don't act like you are so passionate about everything, all the time. That's really exhausting, right? For everyone. So focus on your expertise, and your passion will emerge from that. So I think that's the best advice I would give everyone, especially when AI can solve almost everything right now. Focus on your expertise and then the passion will come with it.
You also close it to AI. How do you see AI impacting the future of work, but also in general, the business? How do you think things will change moving forward?
Yeah, I think in terms of, the workplace, the workplaces, we are in right now. I think AI is definitely disrupting how we complete a job or even complete a task. Especially in terms of a task, AI is really good at solving them. So when thinking of your job security, it's no longer about, okay, I'm going to do this job. I'm going to apply to this job, but to inventory your existing skills. Which skills are your best? What skills are needed, and what kind of additional skills you need to train yourself to be really good at right now.
Thank you for sharing your journey. It was a very enjoyable talk, and I'm sure that the audience will also appreciate a lot how you build the company, iKala, and leadership advice that you provided across generations. And obviously, wishing you all the best with making your company public. Thank you, Sega, for coming.
Thank you for listening to Leaders in Motion. And if you want to go further, join the Leaders in Motion Academy, our executive program. The first step is simple. Subscribe to our newsletter in the show notes, and you'll get access to our exclusive insights and all the details about the academy. This podcast is produced by Melanie Hong, who helps leaders and organizations create strategic podcasts. I'm Kevin Hong, and see you next time.